What happens when you mix 19th century architecture with 21st century solar power? Join us as Nate takes us inside his stunning 1800s farmhouse in Fairhaven, Massachusetts, where history meets sustainability with the installation of a powerful 12-kilowatt solar system.
Everywhere we've lived, we've always had old houses and restored old houses and been involved with old houses. I like old houses better than new houses, frankly. I grew up in that world because my parents were antique dealers. Old houses are like antiques, so it's fun to find out the history about the house, and it's fun to bring them back to what they used to be like, which is what happened with this house, which was pretty run down when we bought it, but that was 40 years ago. So the house was built around 1870. They don't know exactly. It's pretty close to 1870. The guy's name was Nathaniel Benson, and he was a local guy, and this was one of the oldest houses in East Fairhaven. And he had a large farm here. He had a giant barn right behind where our garage is now, and he owned property all the way to the water. And he had cows, and he dug a pond behind here for his cattle. And he'd march the cattle across the road all the way down to the water. Well, because it's a Victorian farmhouse and because it's an emphasis on being a farm, its details are rather minimal by Victorian standards. That being said, the parlors in the front of the house are connected with beautiful pocket doors which slide in between to open up the space, which make it pretty amazing. The other thing is it has nice tall ceilings and fairly open floor plan. There's a small tower-like structure with a very beautiful circular staircase in the front. And there's a lot of nice hardware with the house, and the windows are all original to the house. So there are a lot of details that a house of that age, generally people just moved or changed and made them different, so it changes the appearance of the house. We had a very early picture that we have of the house, and we used that for reference. Now, tried to keep the original feeling of the house and bring it back to what it looked like originally. My wife and I have always been interested in not just preservation and antiques, but also solar. So we bought this abandoned property and lived there for 10 years and also restored that as a brick building. In fact, when we bought that abandoned property back in 1980, the first thing we did was we had solar hot water put on the roof. That system lasted for more than 35 years on that building. We moved here, did the same thing. Before we got involved with PV stuff, we also have a hot water system on the other side of the front roof. When you work with an old house, you always have to realize you're going to have shortcomings. You just do it and you play with them as best you can. So I think we have it about as efficient as we can possibly get it. In the new addition, we used some modern windows, but there's 2/2 windows, which are the same style of window for the original house. But on the original house, I've never quite had the heart to change the windows over because it gets so destructive on the interior woodwork and things. I can't quite bear to do it. So we have storm windows, but we've had Mass Save come through with all the insulation. They added more in the attic area, but these are 2x4 walls, and it's hard to stuff much more insulation in there. The addition, we've gone with 2x6, and that's going to help a lot. Our house, like I say, is a farmhouse. It's not a fancy house. A lot of historic homes are either post and beam, which this is not. This is after post and beam. It's a balloon structure, which gives you a lot of leeway in terms of wiring. Post and beam sometimes are difficult. And then you get into really high-end Victorian stuff, and you have to worry about interior moldings and, a lot of things that are much more difficult to deal with than my house was. There's 2x4s that go right up through, so that you don't have problems coming down fishing wires. We had a windstorm about a year ago, and I came out of the house and saw a shingle on the ground, and I said to myself, oh man, I feel bad for my neighbor. And then I looked up on my roof and realized it was my shingle. That was also a big impetus to think about solar at that time, for obvious reasons. And we always had positive feelings about PV since we built this garage last year, with the idea that it would be we would have a good south-facing roof that we could put panels on, because our goal is to one day get an electric car or a hybrid car, which would be powered by that. It came out great. When they showed up, you could tell that this was not the first rodeo that these guys were dealing with. They were really good, and they knew exactly what they were each doing. They broke up into various teams working on front installation, back installation, electric downstairs, wiring here, there. And I have to say, it was a very impressive orchestra of getting all the work done in a day. It was not even a full day. I mean, they were waiting for the building inspector to come so they could sign off, and everything had been picked up. Everything was neat as a pin. They had put a lightning rod in for me for the whole system because I didn't have one. It's really pretty amazing. I feel like PV has come kind of a long way from when I first started seeing it on houses. It used to look very in your face. It didn't blend in well with the architecture, with the roof, and I'm very pleased, especially on the front of our house, the way those panels fall away, being black with a black edge against the dark gray, and so it just melts away, which allows you to see the architecture and not necessarily the solar panels. The other big concern that I always have about any of this, and I've had to go through this with this addition and everything, is the services, the gas line, the sewer line, the electric line. All of those companies, sometimes they're just not very receptive to how their little inputs look on your house. So I was concerned about how all that would look, and that's one of the things I'm the most pleased with, is that the electrician who came, who helped put that all in, he did an amazing job situating all of the gadgetry in one spot around the corner of the house, not on the front of the house, where you can get to it, but where it's out of sight. And I was very thrilled about that. And then they also had to run a lot of wires from the garage down through this crawl space and up from down there, down into the basement, big cable. And they were able to thread it in really nicely through the backs of bookcases. Spent some time. It was not easy. Old houses are not easy. And it was nice that they were able to find the little niches to hide this stuff. Very, very helpful. I think there's 11 of the panels are on the garage, 7 are on the front. And again, we're very lucky because we're facing due south. This house does not have a lot of light in it from the south because we have porches on the front. But what it does have is a lot of roof that faces south. Pretty impressive, the amount of juice that we're creating off of this system. A lot more than we are actually using right now, which gives us some hope about a couple of things we might do in the future, like an electric stove, like the car I said. I have to say the cost is a little bit lesser of the import as is the environmental impact of what we're trying to do, because if we don't start doing it soon, we're cooked, so to speak. Well, the whole concept of conservation and conserving things are all tied up in everything that has to do with saving things. It's all saving things. It's no different. That's one reason why I think my wife and I own maybe 2 pieces of furniture that we've purchased new. Everything else is antiques. Everything else I've either bought at a yard sale, estate sale, antique auction, antique show, flea markets, beside side of the road, because I'm a firm believer that there's no reason to necessarily own anything new. There's no reason in this world. There's plenty of stuff being produced all the time. So my attitude to that is to try to save everything I can and reuse it. And that is what I do. And, if you're reusing the sun's power, it's the same thing. It's all conservation. You're just reusing what's already there. But you're taking advantage of the sun in this situation, But I've always been one to I love picking stuff off the road, the side of the road. I've got a lot of good stuff on the side of the road.